right, welcome to Riverside Church Podcast number 4. The fun started today before the cameras ever started rolling, so we're going to try not to laugh our way through the whole podcast, but we've had a lot of fun together before we even got started. Well, as you know, if you've been following along with us so far, we are doing a series here called Generations, in which every week we are interviewing a different generation. Today is the millennial generation. And let me give you a little bit about millennials, and then I'm going to introduce to you the millennials that we have with us. And let me tell you this, though, interesting thing. I did a Google search and a YouTube search for millennials, and every YouTube video that I saw was negative. It was either a comic making fun of millennials or something about, how millennials are, whatever. And we are, in our podcast, celebrating all the generations. And there is a lot to celebrate in the millennial generation. And so I'm excited about that, to hear what we can learn from millennials, what millennials can teach, not only the older generations, but what they have to pass on down to the next generation as well. So you are a millennial if you were born between 1981 and 1996. Some researchers say 1981 and 2000, somewhere around there. The millennials are called the first global generation because you're the first generation that could be connected to anybody in the globe, no matter where, because of the internet. You're called the collaborative generation, because you value collaboration, working together, whereas Gen Xers were independent or are independent. We like to work independently. Millennials like to work together and accomplish tasks, so that's a good thing. You were tagged with a lot of negative stereotypes, but those stereotypes started changing around 2012. We might take some time to talk about some of those negative stereotypes, and you can talk about whether you think they're valid or invalid or whatever. We may get to that tonight. We may not. But that started to change in the 2010s, probably as the millennials started turning 30 and started having kids, and also started entering the workforce in full force, especially in manager positions. So I want to give you 10 positive things about millennials, and then we'll just jump into some discussion. Here's 10 positive things I found. Millennials are influential in the workplace. They're confident with technology. They're cautious about their personal data. They're quietly optimistic about the environment. I'm not sure why you're quietly optimistic. It's like you don't want to tell people that you think that the planet's good. I don't know. But they're avid savers. Millennials like to save money, but they love to travel. They value experiences over material goods. So you'd rather spend on a vacation than you would buy a new house. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. Although you just bought a new house, so maybe it didn't work for you.
But that's okay. We also planned vacation before we bought the house. I was gonna
say. They're nostalgic. They're competitive. They're obsessed with podcasts. And they are not fans of Gen Z. That's not a positive thing, but that's one of the things. And I don't know if I said this, they love to travel. So that's 10 things. Okay, so let me introduce you guys. If you're part of Riverside Church, you probably know these two ladies. They've been part of the church your whole lives, I think, for the most part. Yep. And this is Katie Reed, used to be Katie Helvey. She's married to the great Justin Reed. They have
the great Justin.
2 kids and baby Ben on the way. And here is Destiny Casey, almost said Booth. Destiny Casey, married to Ryan Casey, or Ryan Booth, whatever you want to call him. They've been married for a little while, just bought a brand new house, so excited about that. And got a couple dogs that they love, and a bunch of nieces and nephews they love to take care of as well. So anyway, I'm going to just start throwing out some questions, and we'll kind of go with it and laugh our way through and figure out.
Okay.
So let's start with this. Describe what it was like growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah. Okay.
Go for it.
I mean, I'm one of four, for anybody that doesn't know. I'm a middle child.
Explains a lot.
Listen now. You're the oldest one. That explains a lot, too.
Yep.
But with one of four, I mean, we played outside a lot. Mama grew up that way, and I think she kind of instilled that in us, you know. Didn't really get, like, our first cell phones till we were 16. Didn't really have, like, cable and all of that stuff going on. So we rode our bikes everywhere around Salem. Definitely, I would say a different time because, you know, we would leave early in the morning and we wouldn't come back till later. And we would go to the park up the street and hang out with our friends. And we didn't really, you know, have to worry about stalkers or anything like that. Like, we just kind of went out and we played and we came back, and it wasn't really, you know, it's totally different today. I couldn't imagine letting my niece go out on a bike and go to a park by herself and not sit there and wonder if she was going to make it back. So, which was kind of nice. But we also were and I think we'll probably get to this, but like we were at the brink of technology. So we got to experience that as we got older. But for the most part, you know, childhood was family and just being together and close friends and things like that. You know, we stayed at a friend's house for a week at a time. They stayed at our house for a week at a time. So, but yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely.
Yeah.
I was like, childhood right there. Yeah, I remember getting, like, my first cell phone. Do you remember the flip phones? And you had to pay for your ringtone, and you got the little the little covers for it.
And free text and calls after 9. So, like, don't call me till after 9.
Yes.
Don't text me till after 9.
And you could only text, like, 180 characters or whatever.
Yeah.
So I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So that's when the text lingo was big. You know, now our cell phones correct my grammar for me.
Oh, yeah.
So, but yeah, we didn't get our, you know, Mama's rule was you don't get your first cell phone until you're 16. She paid for it for 6 months, and then it was our responsibility if we wanted to keep it. So.
Were you 16 when you got yours or younger?
No, I was around 16. It was right around, like you said, I got mine. It was like when I had volleyball practice all the time, and that way they could just and I started driving. That basically when I started driving is when I got one, because, you know, you have to have one if you're unsupervised, at least with that. But yeah, like you said, I remember, like, especially in elementary school and stuff, you would have the sleepover things. Like, it would be an incentive where you could sleep over. I think you mentioned last week the skate center all-nighters.
Yeah. We did that quite a bit.
Never in the world would I
let Gracie do that now.
No, it's so different. And like you said, you would just hang out outside and just play. I remember VHS. That was the thing.
Going and renting movies. I love that.
Blockbuster.
And they got rid of those.
And popcorn from Blockbuster. What was the other one? There was Movie Stars. Do you
Movie
remember
Stars.
Movie
Yeah,
Stars?
that was where the Med Express was in Salem right now.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Now I feel old. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, when they closed down, we went and bought all their Barbie DVDs for Hannah.
Oh, did you really?
She loved the Barbie movies, so
That's
we
awesome.
bought every DVD they had on that had Barbie in it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Probably still have them.
I remember like the scooters. That was the Razor scooters. That was a big thing too.
A lot of shin injuries and things like that. But we rode scooters or bikes everywhere. And we'd pile as many people as we could on those.
Yeah. Now, your first cell phone didn't have a keyboard on it, right? So you had to push all the numbers.
No, I thought I was big stuff when I got the slide. You turned it sideways and slid it up with the keyboard. But the first one, no, it was
T9.
T9.
Yeah. That was like a thing, and you would press it however many times you needed the letter.
Yeah, I saw there was a guy on like the Tonight Show or something who was the fastest texter supposedly in the world. He held the world record, and they brought a teenage girl on, and she beat him immediately to beat the world record. Yeah, it
does not surprise me.
All right, so I'm going to turn a little serious for a second.
Okay.
So you guys were you were young. You guys were born in the early 90s, mid 90s. So you were young when 9/11 happened.
Yep. Third grade.
Third grade.
So tell me what you remember about it and how it affected you after that.
I remember exactly where I was. I was in Miss Burnett's classroom, and they had a TV that they would put, like it was on wheels that they would roll
cart.
in. Yeah, the TV cart. And I remember she got a phone call and just started crying and then immediately turned it on and you could see the towers.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember going home and there was just like this solemn air at our house that just something horrible had happened. But afterwards, it was obviously really sad, but there was so much unity. I remember like just in the nation that was the main focus was unity and stuff.
Yeah, it didn't matter what party you were Team America,
Yeah.
take care of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in gym class in 3rd grade. Miss Smith was my teacher.
Okay.
And she came and got us at a gym class. And she looking back now, she explained it without explaining what was happening. Exactly. And I remember she was just there to, like, calm us because she had turned on the TV. And, you know, everybody was coming to pick up their kids at that time because who knew what was going to happen. We stayed there because we were just right up the street. And, you know, at the time, that was probably one of the safer places for us to be. And, you know, and she turned on the TV, and I remember she left it on. And we actually saw the second plane hit. And, like, it's just a memory you'll never forget. Like, just, you know, how smells and everything, you take you back. Like, just classrooms, you just kind of, so. But, yeah. But I would agree, like, the unity and stuff that came out of that, even just the love and care that you got from people you didn't know, you know, your neighbors around the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Now, do you consider this one of the most impactful things that's happened in your life? Or is there an event that's like the event that you think is, like for me, 9/11 probably, I was 20, what was I? 23, 24. Pastor in a church, scared to death about how I'm going to talk to these people now that I'm supposed to be the pastor of. And so for me, that's like probably it's the biggest thing in my life that I can remember, as far as like, you know, world events.
Yeah.
And I was alive through the Berlin Wall and all that stuff, but I was young. So I was like, I was kind of like you guys were when the Berlin Wall fell. I was young and it was important, but it wasn't, I didn't understand how important it was.
Ripple effect.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So is there something later, like you guys, you know, you're more coming of age, like when George Floyd was killed or some of those things.
I mean, I think that, and of course, I think the pandemic really, and I know that affected everybody, but I feel like in some ways it affected our generation a little more, just because we were at that vulnerable age, you know, where, you know, we're making connections, growing in our workplace, kind of things like that. But I think, I mean, 9/11, I think affected me looking back on it. But at the time, it was just uncertainty and not knowing, you know, exactly what was going on. And we were still at the age where I don't feel like we were getting the true story on a lot of things. Because, I mean, in 3rd grade, I'd be, 9?
Yeah.
8 or 9. So I think it was still, you know, a little, not hush-hush, because, I mean, of course, it was all over the world, but it was something that was not, you know, we didn't fully understand the impacts of it.
Yeah,
your
parents are protecting you from kind of the biggest
real world.
part.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's set the heavy aside for a little while. Let's go back to some fun stuff. So you're the Disney Channel generation.
Absolutely.
What are your favorite shows?
Lizzie McGuire.
Even Stevens.
I mean, Nickelodeon, too. Like you said, the Wild Thornberries.
Yeah, Rugrats, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
SpongeBob.
That's So Raven.
That's So Raven. I love that show. And what was Wizards of Waverly Place?
Yeah, I started to get out of that, though.
I like that.
Boy Meets World. That was.
Oh, Boy Meets World. Yeah, that was a big one. And what's the one? I'm not going to remember the name of it now. It'll come to me in like 2 seconds.
Which one?
It had it was the family, and they were from the future. Phil of the Future.
Phil of the Future?
Yeah, Phil of the Future.
Okay, so you guys are young enough for Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
For me, that feels like that was something that, like, maybe I was just old enough,
I think
too old to watch.
we were like on the
I
when
think
you were
that it had
okay.
all aired. We
Yeah.
just caught from the beginning.
Yeah.
Back
okay,
up.
gotcha.
like we grew up on Friends too, but that obviously
Yeah, Friends and like
yeah.
Gilmore Girls and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What was your first social media?
MySpace.
Do not look up our profiles. Please.
I don't even know
What
how
I
to
want to
get
know
to
is
mine.
who watching this podcast remembers MySpace.
Tom was your first friend.
Yes, Tom was your
Oh,
friend.
that's right. I forgot about that.
No matter what, you had one friend.
For some reason, I feel like there was a big deal when he like made his profile a cat picture or something. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay.
I forgot. Yes.
Anyway. Yes, MySpace.
Yeah, that was
I
the
don't
thing.
remember how old I was when I got a Facebook though.
I don't either.
I remember my mom being so weird about what we could put on MySpace and like what she would allow us to put on there, and we were, you could have it, but only certain people, and
Yeah.
there was a lot of limitations to it.
And now it's like absolutely, yeah,
Yeah,
lock that thing down.
yeah.
Yeah. So do you remember a time without technology?
Technology, like just in
A
general.
computer, like a time without a computer.
I remember taking keyboarding
Yeah.
in 8th grade,
Where you had to hide the keyboard.
so you could learn how to type,
Yeah.
but
that was-
you couldn't. But I don't remember us being big on computers until like high school.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't necessarily like. They always had a computer. Like the teacher always had a computer.
They
or
had one,
something.
but we always had projectors.
Yeah.
Like put the film on it, write on it projectors. Like it wasn't like what you think of a projector
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
until high school.
Yeah, because the smart boards
smart
didn't
boards.
come out until high school.
Yeah, until we were almost not graduated, but high school.
Yeah.
We were.
Social media of choice now.
Oh,
Ooh. I only do Facebook.
I do too. We're old.
I
Oh,
don't
you're
really-
old school. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really do Instagram. I did
don't do
Snapchat
TikTok.
for a little bit. Didn't really care.
Did you really? I'm gonna judge you.
I
a little
did.
bit.
And the only
Why-
reason
Why did you have a Snapchat?
I don't know.
What?
I don't know why.
Whoa, hold on. Let's fight this out. This is good.
I don't know why I had a Snapchat. It was just
So, okay, I'm going to tell you what my Gen Z kids say, okay? My Gen Z kids,
Supposedly it's
my Gen Z
easier to send
kids say Facebook is for old people.
Oh.
Yeah, they've told me that. And I'm like,
oh.
okay.
And
Then
so
why?
if you are not old, then you have Instagram or Snapchat.
I have tried.
Snapchat is
Insta-
how you talk to your friends. Instagram is how you want the world to see you. And
Oh.
Facebook is the front you put up for your parents so your parents can see what you're doing.
I did not have time for that. Like, ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah,
what
kids,
in the world?
So what I've learned is that most kids have a Facebook page. They don't interact with each other on it. They get on it to see what else is going on.
Okay.
But they
sneaky.
but they don't like if you'll look, like both my kids have Facebook page. But they never comment or post anything.
They're just stalking.
They
people.
just stalk. It's what they look because schools have Facebook pages, so they use it for school. They
news
use it to
outlet.
check on parents. They use it
to check.
Yeah.
for other stuff. Yeah, but Instagram is where how they right now until it changes how
Yeah.
they want the world to see them, and then Snapchat's
I mean-
how they talk because it's harder for a parent to follow.
Do
through
they
and
have
see
a
what they're
Twitter
looking at.
or?
Well, I
it's
will
X
say-
now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I will say that Snapchat is convenient if you're just sending pictures back and forth. But like if you're having a full conversation, and the thing is like I feel like the younger generation, they take pictures of everything, food. They take a picture of their coffee. They take a picture of whatever they're doing.
Take a picture like where your forehead is like the. It's
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't-
0.5 or something.
Yeah, I don't know,
What
but
are you doing?
I don't understand it. I ain't hating on it because I never tried it. But like,
Yeah. Well, see, it's also about streaks. That's the whole thing with Snapchat.
yes, I do know
Is
about that.
you
Do you
have
know about
to-
streaks?
I don't even know what a streak. I know what
Because
streaking
they're old.
is.
These are
I'll
old
just
millennials.
let you all know from the outside perspective over here, you all sound extremely old right now.
I love it. I
and
love
I'm a
it.
millennial.
I love it that this Gen Xer's like, I know what I'm talking about a little bit.
So Snapchat, I know.
What is a streak?
So the streak is like if you and I were friends on Snapchat and we send each other one snap a day, then that gives us a streak if we do it every single day. So like we could get a 365-day streak if we did it every single day of the
That
year.
is not
So
what I think
Hannah-
of when I think of streaking.
Well, Hannah and her friend Sydney are I might be wrong. I might be exaggerating, but I want to say
sure they're
I want to
crazy.
say it's over 2,000. It might be 3,000.
Pro streak.
Yeah.
And there was nonstop, because if
Yeah.
you break it, then it starts back at 1.
Yeah, it does.
And so something happened at camp where they couldn't get an internet connection
Oh no.
a couple years ago, and Sydney contacted Snapchat and they made an exception
That's awesome.
because they couldn't continue their streak.
that's
and fixed
commitment
it.
right there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So if they end up being on the podcast next week, we'll talk to Sydney and Hannah about
That's
that.
funny.
But
Streak.
But I've
Yeah.
had Snapchat, I've had Instagram. I just usually use Facebook. And honestly, like I'm getting kind of to the point where I'm not on Facebook near as much as I used to be. And because I usually use it for like, oh, if there's a wreck on the interstate, let me look up WDBJ7 and see like, you know, what's going
Well,
on.
and
Now
But-
you sound ancient.
I feel like
you know.
that's sort of like I'm on the cusp end of millennials, so I was born in 96. But I feel like the way that I use social media is very much like each one has its own use.
Yeah.
And it's not like
There's
I
a
have one
purpose.
of choice.
Yes.
You know, like I go on Instagram to like look at other artists and stuff like that. But like
Yeah.
Facebook, I go to keep up to date with things. So I feel like each one has its own purpose.
Wait,
That's a good way to put
we
it.
also
Seth
didn't
is a
talk about
zennial. He's a zennial.
a zennial.
He's kind of a millennial, and he's
You wanna
he's
know-
really
Get outta
a
here.
You want to
Gen
know
Z.
why? Because he has 3 other siblings that are millennials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to know what you guys think about TikTok then, if we're on the social media.
Oh,
Lordy
conversation.
B.
Yeah,
Don't
Listen,
even get
I
me
watch all the
started.
shorts on Facebook that are just TikToks that are also on Instagram that are also on Snapchat.
I'm
so
hooked on Reels.
yeah.
Are you?
Yes,
Yeah.
ridiculously hooked on Reels.
It's the
stupid.
same thing. I mean, TikTok is just all reels.
See,
That's
the
all
one-
But I
Once,
refuse to do TikTok.
Yeah,
the
I
one
do too.
thing, I don't do TikTok. I do technically, I think, have an Instagram, but I've only used it for like Gracie had preschool pictures that they would post of her
Yeah.
there. But you said that we're obsessed with podcasts. I am not. I'm
See,
not one of those people.
I have gotten into podcasts, and I think you would like them a lot.
I just don't.
I just have to convince you and give you the right ones to listen to.
I just.
But
Well,
podcasts are really nice.
When Seth approached me about doing a podcast, the first sentence out of my mouth was, "What is a podcast?"
Okay, now you're old.
Yeah. Once he explained it to me, I thought, "Oh, I watch podcasts all the time. I just didn't know they were podcasts
Podcasts.
because
Right.
I watch them on
Right.
YouTube. I'm watching the video. I didn't know that
Gotcha.
was podcast."
Yeah.
So now
Another
I'm
one that
enlightened.
we didn't talk about that I know you and I both are on is Pinterest.
Oh,
Pinterest is a
For
that's
big
real.
cool.
one.
Yeah.
That is like, my husband hates Pinterest.
I love Pinterest. Ryan
I do
does not
too.
have. Ryan, I made him log into Pinterest one time because I couldn't get into mine, so he has one. But
Justin doesn't even have a Facebook. He has no social media. He's an odd bird, but he just doesn't like it
he's
because
private school.
he is.
No,
Private.
Justin's just a baby boomer.
No, he's
Just a
a
boomer.
He is.
he's a private Christian school.
Yeah. No, he graduated with what 9 in his class or something.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
But
He talked to all of his friends. He didn't need a social media platform.
oh, and I
Anyway.
have a LinkedIn too, but that's like
That's business
we're
more.
mature.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's what I
Sure.
think. Like
We're
each one
mature.
has its own purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys watch YouTube?
I mean, if
We-
somebody
yeah.
sends it to me,
Right, but you're not like. See, now I feel like Gen
if I
Z
need
is
to-
always on YouTube.
yeah. No, I'm not one of those like I don't want to watch somebody play a video game and talk about it. That just
No,
makes
that's
no
not
sense to
like
me.
Ryan and
That's
I
my
will
kids.
watch cooking. Like Omnivorous Adam. We'll watch Good Mythical Morning. We'll do random things here and there. But if I need to know how to fix something or want
Yeah.
to look up something,
Fix a
YouTube
washing
is my
machine.
go-to. Like
But you watch it almost like you would watch TV.
So for you, it's utilitarian.
yes,
Yes.
I do
You're
not.
There's a
for what-
purpose, like
yeah.
you said.
Yes, I do not sit down and think, "Oh, I'm going to open YouTube and just watch a video."
Just
No.
browse randomly.
Yeah,
There's
but
a
if,
purpose.
Yeah, there's usually a purpose, unless there's just
So why do you think there's a lot of because millennials are in their 30s now, most of them, not all of them. We got one here who's not quite there yet, but getting there. And so Gen Z is now the oldest Gen Zers are 25 or so. So they're kind of, they're the new picked on group. The youngest group seems to always be the one that's picked on. There was a lot of negative, there were and are a lot of negative stereotypes about millennials. You know, the guy with the man bun sitting in the coffee shop on his laptop. Or whatever.
They're pointing fingers over there. So.
Or with his wearing his purse.
His
whatever
satchel?
It's called a satchel.
His satchel, yeah. Yeah, I pick on Seth Beth
And
all
that
the time.
satchel's really nice, by the way.
Yeah.
It's
but
an
that was
heirloom item.
Yeah.
But that was that was kind of the stereotype. So why do you think that millennials got that stereotype, and what do you agree with or disagree with about your generation?
Ooh, that's a hard question.
Do you think it's part of it is simply because every generation seems somewhat distrustful of the next generation at first?
Well, I think it comes up as sometimes you're older than that generation and you would have done it differently. You've learned your lesson or you did do it differently. And so you think you've done better than what they're doing currently. So I think that I could see where some of the, accusations or whatever against millennials came up, but at the same time, like a lot of those were debunked at the same time, I think.
Yeah.
But I think it just depends
Certainly
on who you talk
changing.
to.
A lot of the perspective is changing.
Yeah, I think a lot of it also stems from technology, because I think like the generation before us, there wasn't a huge presence of technology, and so like you had blue collar, and you went out and worked. Well, then here we come, and I'm gonna go to work and do a desk job and type on my computer all day and make twice as much as possibly a blue collar person, and it's like you sit on your butt all day and do nothing. You know, that type of mentality. It's a different type of work.
Yeah.
But,
Well, and I think even the newer generations coming up being, the YouTube influencers and all of that stuff. And like some people, I think, could easily look at that and be like, you do nothing but video yourself all day. And sometimes they make way more money than.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point, because I actually just read an article. So my generation was told, you've got to go to college. You've got to go to college. You've got to go to college. If you don't go to college, you're not going to become anything in the world. So my generation and millennials all went to college.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so my generation is kind of mixed. The older of my generation tends to be tradespeople. The younger of my generation, like me, most of us went to college. So the older generation are the plumbers and the welders and the trades jobs. The younger of my generation and millennials primarily work in the tech sector or manager type jobs or desk type jobs or technology jobs, whatever. And so there is that. I think that's part of the stereotype. But what I just read, and actually I saw it when my kids went to high school. When I went to high school, it was all about preparing for college.
Yep.
When we went for Hannah's 9th grade orientation, which was 4 years ago, the first thing the principal said in the first meeting was, not every student is going to go to college.
Wow.
And so we are going to help prepare them either for a trade or for college.
Yeah, that is unheard of.
Yeah,
for us.
that's not what we heard either.
So what's happening is the younger Gen Zers and Gen Alpha are choosing trades.
Which is so needed.
You're going to have this new generation that's not tech savvy because they're trade savvy, and we're going to recycle the whole generational thing again. It's interesting.
Yeah.
We were talking about that on Sunday, that the pendulum is ridiculous. Like, I think when you mentioned divorce rate and stuff, like I would, because your generation has the lowest divorce rate, right? Or lower divorce rate.
Yeah, lower.
Yeah, so you expect it to see it swing.
So your generation marries even later than my generation did.
Yeah.
And statistically,
I think we we were the exception, right?
We're odd birds. in
Yeah,
that
we are odd
space.
birds.
Yeah.
Married
So
high school
statistically, typically, what happens when, and it's not that it's a bad thing to marry young.
No.
You just have to have help from the community to help you, which is what doesn't always happen, especially in the baby boomer generation. It was don't ask, don't tell. Like what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors, and
Gotcha.
that's nobody's business but their own. And so you didn't. If a couple was having trouble, they didn't go see a counselor, because if they did, it was a bad thing.
Yeah.
Whereas now, we actually the pendulum is swung where it's like, go see a counselor, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's just that's how it swung. There's much less stigma attached to mental health issues or
Right.
counseling issues or whatever today.
And I think honestly, a side note from that, I think the COVID pandemic helped that a lot.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people had some mental health issues and they realized, oh, I can go and talk to somebody and feel a lot better and not get that stipulation put on them that they're weak or they're not capable of doing it themselves.
So what I would say may happen, and I might be wrong, is we're gonna see an even lower divorce rate in the millennial generation, because millennials are waiting longer. They're more established. They know what they want. So by the time they're married, they're a little more mature and less apt to marry somebody that's not a good fit.
Okay.
But what's also happening among millennials and Gen Zers is they're also cohabitating before they marry, which, and sometimes it's almost like a try it before you buy it kind of mentality. And so they're not getting divorced. They're just splitting up from relationships that aren't marriage relationships.
Okay.
But
Makes
more
sense.
and more often they're kids. So
involved.
even though they're not married, they have kids. And so you have more and more families that have mixed families, because she may bring a child from a previous relationship even though she was never married into it. So anyway, it's
It's
an
kind of the
interesting
same
thing.
dynamics, just less legality,
I was
like
gonna say.
paper
Probably.
stuff to go through.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. So interesting. Talking about changes, how things have changed. Prior to the pandemic, 4 in 10 millennials listed none when asked what religion they associated with. There's a good book out there called The Rise of the Nuns. People who, N-O-N-E-S, not N-U-N-S, by the way,
Right.
who check the box none when it comes to religious affiliation.
That's crazy to think about.
I know that's a huge.
I think it's
Yeah.
hard for us to think because we grew up in the
Yeah,
church.
so that's it's 40%.
Yeah.
However, since the pandemic, millennial church attendance increased from 21% to 39%, even as other generations declined. Specifically, Gen X, my generation, which went to church in a pretty high percentage, a lot of Gen Xers stopped going to church after the pandemic. And they were the people who were working in the church, who were volunteers. And they pulled back or they stopped. Most of them were probably more marginal, not necessarily the workers, but the marginal ones, and they pulled back and are not going to church. And so while other generations pull back, like the silent generation, a lot of the silent generation are still scared to go back to church because they're still afraid of COVID 3 years later, which has been
4 years
4
now.
years. That's right, 4 years.
March, yeah.
So,
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
yeah, some are still afraid to go to church because there's such a fear about it, even though it's largely a thing of the past. But millennials are bucking the trend and going to church more. So what do you think drove millennials back to church post-pandemic?
I mean, speaking just from experience living through the pandemic, and like you felt really isolated during that time. Like everything shut down. Everything was just totally different within a week or a couple weeks time frame. And I think that, speaking from experience, like I missed that community. I missed being with, like I love my husband, but it was just me and him and the dogs. And so having that community was really what I think or missing that community is really what brought a lot of millennials to church. Just to have somebody that they know is there to support them and to love them and to get connected again. Because I'm sure that, if there are still people that waited a long time to go back to anything, any type of group activity, because there were a lot of people that were still scared to, to be in large crowds for a while, and I can't blame them. But that really kind of helped, they were searching for that, and they wanted to be able to connect somehow and to, feel like they belonged to something when they lost other connections.
Yeah, it was definitely like, I mean, again, we're kind of the exception to the rule, I guess, with the nun thing. But, like for me, it's my second family. Like, so not being able to be with everybody, it's just different, You can watch virtually and stuff, and that's great and all, but there is something that's special about actually being in person. And I remember when we did the drive-in thing, that was so refreshing because you had, like you said, it was like the zombie apocalypse happened. I remember we were, Justin and I were coming back from Disney, and my mom called me and said, "Hey, do you need toilet paper?" And I'm like, "No, I think we're good." And she's like, "You don't understand.
Like, you need toilet paper."
and it was just like,
but
there was
just
nothing. And then, with Gracie, like she was, 2. And so, we couldn't hang out with anybody. You couldn't have her like socially grow with anybody. I was pregnant with John Luke for some of it, and that was a weird thing. And so again, it's just, you have a second family that you're missing. It's different. There's just something about it being in person for church.
And I think that a lot of people realize that was one of the few safe places that you could go and be in a crowd and, join into, get connected with other people. And
almost like, I don't know, because at that point, especially at the very beginning, you didn't know what was going on. You didn't, did you need to spray your mail with Lysol and your groceries with Lysol, or leave it out?
Don't pack the packaging things if it came from like,
there's so much stuff. Like, you didn't know what to do. You didn't know how to talk to people. So much political stuff too. And stuff.
Well, and I think too, like we were talking a little bit before the podcast, like I think, the pandemic affected every generation differently. But I think in a lot of ways, and maybe just because I am a millennial, but I think it affected this generation a lot more. No, probably not more than like the Gen Zers and things like that because of what they went through with school. But like, a lot of millennials were upcoming in their careers, and we were, all of a sudden we were used to having this job that we went to, and now we're stuck at home. And like, it's different. And that was, a lot of people experience that too. It wasn't heard of to, work from home that much. And so I just think it was a lot different. Like, you having little ones, like, you never expected to not be able to have your 2-year-old play with somebody or go to a playground, or, you know what I mean?
Make them wear a mask at school. Like, try and have a 2-year-old wear a mask and explain, don't touch your face with a mask on.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
It's different. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I think the other part of it with church is that was, like, for me, I equated that with a somewhat form of normalcy. And so I flocked to that. Like, you longed for normalcy in a not normal time. And it was, again, it's like home, but again, like you said, you love your husband and you love your kids, but you want to like actually go.
Yeah, we're made for community.
Yep.
God designed us for community. And millennials, I think, more than any other generation, are a reflection of that design that God gave us, because millennials are collaborative, like to work together. So that kind of segues into the last question I have, and that is, how has your faith and community, your church family, how's that impacted your life and your relationship, your personal relationship with God?
From being a millennial type deal, or
just in general?
Just in general. I think so. I think it's interesting to me, like hearing all the different generations, like with your generation needing real instead of just telling its truth, it's real. Like, I think we're kind of a combination of that, because I am definitely one of those people, like, give me proof, but I also am like, I need to fact check it. Like, does the Bible really say that? And so I think, again, like both of us were blessed enough to grow up in the church, and that helped tremendously. Like, having a mentor that you can not even necessarily ask, but just watch and observe has been life-changing. I mean, it really grows your faith, and especially like when you're going through difficult times or facing a certain situation, like they are a testament to faith and that you can lean on. And I think that was huge, at least for me. Yeah. And then also like having stinky people like this one, like that you can, I don't know, like you just go through life with, like it makes a huge difference versus just, being on your own type deal. And I think that's been tremendous for me in my walk.
Yeah. How, when was it that we started small groups here? Do you remember? We did that Soul Shift series, didn't we?
Yeah, probably would have been 2010 maybe.
Okay. Because I remember that being kind of a big pivotal moment. Of course, I grew up in the church. Camp was always a pivotal moment for me as well, going to Indian Cave and all of that. But as an adult, once I got out of high school, it was one of those that the small groups is what really kept me connected. And I think that, you got to experience life not only with just other millennials, but older generations, younger generations. We kind of, like you said, our generation wants that community. And I think we really got that in the church, but we got the true connection that we wanted within the small groups. And so I think that, that really has helped, because you meet people that become your best friends and become your mentors and are like, hey, if you really have a problem, you can say, I just need a hug today. And sometimes a hug can fix some things. And you meet those people that you can rely on and that truly care for you.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of that too, where you have the mentor that you can look up to as an example. But then when it comes time to like be in the trenches spiritually, having that like a close-knit community of friends and not like, a whole group of like 20 people.
Right.
No, it's
but like
small circle.
3 or 4 people that you can immediately rely on is huge.
Yeah, like
that
your
and
5 guys you're meeting with tonight.
Yeah.
Well, supposed to.
Yeah.
Well, and most of the time you meet, everybody has their own set of people that they go to. But like if I came to Katie with a problem that I wanted to talk about and she doesn't have experience, but her other friend did, like she's not going to have a problem saying, hey, you should really talk to her. You know what I mean? So like that community is not just in and of itself, those 5 people. It's without,
Those branches.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how a few minutes ago you were talking about the millennial generation asking what is real. The boomer generation asked what is true. The not the millennial generation, the Gen X generation.
Yeah.
The boomer generation asked what is true. The Gen X generation asked what is real. Experts say that the millennial generation is asking what is good. And what they mean by that is, what can I do to make the world a better place? And so how can I do good, basically? And so I think and that's biblical. We not only need to know the truth and let the truth transform us, which is truth and real, but if the truth has transformed us, then what happens from there? Yeah. What do I do with that truth? How do I do good in the world? And I think that's one of the things that we all need to learn from the millennial generation, because the millennial generation values working together and not just, whereas like some generations will just say, hey, that needs to be done, so let's throw money at it.
Right.
The millennial generation is less apt to give money, but more apt to give their time. And so tapping into that, okay, how can we use those giftings then, to work together to accomplish tasks, whether it's serving in the church or whether it's going on a short-term missions trip or whether it's, getting involved in some organization that we can do good ministry to, but anyway, just an interesting thought.
Yeah. I also think that part of that is because we're all people pleasers. The millennial generation is pretty people pleasing, but in a good way, because we want to feel like we are there and we are, fulfilling a purpose. Yeah. And so, but.
You hit the nail on the head though. Like when you said that we would rather spend money on a trip or an experience.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it goes in hand with that though. Like I would much rather spend my money towards helping be a part of something than just throw money at donating at something. Not that it's bad. It's just like, I feel like you said, I'm more impactful with that.
Yes.
Than anything else.
So we're running down on time, but I think that's one of the reasons that the millennials get stuck with the hipster terminology is because we're looking for authenticity. Yeah. And so we're looking for originality.
Yeah.
And so when you are trying to be original, you are trying to stand out and not look like anybody else. Yeah. And that is where that comes from. But
yeah, there's a book called Generations, I think is what it's called. And
ironically.
Yeah. And the researchers who wrote the book, they describe the millennial generation as the hero generation. They're the ones who want to save the world. Can you guess what question the Gen Zers are asking? They're asking, what is beautiful? What is worth giving my life for? That's their question.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
Bunch of artists.
Yeah. And they're called the artist generation.
What is beautiful?
I
feel like they're building blocks, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what is worthy of my worship? That's the question they're asking. Is God worthy of my worship? And the challenge with the Gen Z generation is 89% of the silent generation attend church regularly. 89% of the Gen Z generation do not.
Wow.
And so they're asking the question, what is worth my worship? But they haven't found it in...
They're hungry.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the way we reach that generation is to show them what's worth worship, what's worth their lives, giving their lives for. How we do that's the question, but it's interesting.
That's deep, man.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. So what is the Gen Z or the...
Gen Z is those born between 97 and 2012.
Okay.
What's after that?
Gen Alpha.
Gen Alpha.
The oldest of which are, 12 now?
Yeah.
10, 11.
That's crazy. Like, we teach
So the kids you're teaching are Gen Alpha kids.
We're ancient.
Who are, according to the statistics, they are the next baby boomer generation. They will be the prophet generation.
So on that note, what is one thing that you would, some point of advice or something that you would want to pass on to the upcoming generations?
Oh, gosh.
Or from your wide array of knowledge.
Yeah.
Or give to the older generations as well. Yeah.
I think embrace change. We've seen a lot of change just in our generation. And some change is good, some change is bad. Of course, you can't embrace all change, but I think that, when we look at our jobs, when we look at our families, when we look at the way that the world has just changed from even when we were 10, like it's just, that's something that you just have to embrace and sometimes learn how to handle things differently and to be okay with that. And, I'm always one that I have a huge fear of the unknown. I do not like to not know what is coming my way, but sometimes you can't. Mm-hmm. You can't know what's coming. And so just embracing change.
Yeah, I would say that mine's kind of similar with that. Like, don't sweat the small stuff is what I would say. Because, like, I have a tendency to micro focus on things, believe it or not.
What?
And I feel like, when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it's like, man, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, do I need to get through my giant to-do list, or do I need to spend more time with my family or more time with God? Mm-hmm. And in the grand scheme, all that crap doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is
Stuff.
it really
I say
important? It's all right. Is it really important that I vacuum that floor right now, or is it more important that I sit down on the floor and play cards with my kid?
Yeah.
It's
Finding
different.
that.
The older we get, the more we recognize. I think that's why God gave us grandparents, because grandparents, I think, do with our kids what they wish they would have done with us.
Absolutely.
I've heard that. Yeah. I also heard somebody said something the other day that was, about not knowing the future and things like that. It's like sometimes the decisions that we make don't necessarily have to be the right ones, but you can make it the right one. Yeah. And so I think just learning to adapt and learning to maneuver around and, so.
All right. Well, Seth's telling me I got to bring this to a close. So it's been a great conversation. I appreciate I think we could sit here and talk for a couple more hours.
Probably could.
But love you guys. Appreciate you. Appreciate all that you do and all that you bring to the table, and for your wisdom as well. And glad I get to be a part of your life and that you let me be a part of your life. Thank you for watching. Thanks for being a part of it. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
Dun, 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 dun.